So let's talk about AI. It's poised to change, well, pretty much everything about how we work, right? It's one of the most powerful tools we've ever cooked up. But here's the crazy part. For all the hype, a ton of people are super suspicious of it. And in a lot of workplaces, they're not just hesitant, they're actively pushing back. So what is really going on here? Okay, let's kick things off with some numbers because they tell a really interesting story. A 2024 survey shows this. Just massive gap between generations when it comes to using generative AI. You've got over half of the younger crowd, 18 to 24, who've given it a whirl. But then you look at workers 55 and up, only 16%. But here's the thing, you can't just chalk this up to an age thing. This data is really just the tip of the iceberg, pointing to a much wider, deeper suspicion that cuts across the entire workforce. And that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Why all the suspicion? Because let's be real, this isn't just a simple case of people being anti-tech. No. This is a deeply human, super complex reaction that, honestly, if we want to move forward with AI, we absolutely have to get our heads around. So to really get to the bottom of this, we've got to do something crucial. We need to step into the employee's shoes. We have to start looking at this resistance not as some obstacle to bulldoze through, but as a genuine perspective that we need to understand. So when researchers dig into this, they find that AI resistance is way more than just someone saying, nope, not for me. It's this deep-seated, gut-level refusal to even engage with it. And it all boils down to three core feelings. Three things happening inside our own heads. All right, and this is where it gets super interesting because this slide really maps out that internal landscape. See, resistance isn't just one single feeling. It's actually a cocktail of three distinct things. You've got fear, this sense of inefficacy, and a deep-seated antipathy. So let's break down what each of these really mean. Okay, first up, fear. This is the most primal, the most visceral reaction. And it's not just about the obvious fear of, a robot is going to take my job. It goes deeper. I mean, think about those 2024 dock worker strikes against port automation. Sure, that was about job security, but it was also about the fear of not being able to learn the new skills and real concerns over the safety of working side by side with these massive, sometimes unpredictable machines. Then you've got ineffectiveness. And this one hits different. This is that gut punch feeling that the skills you've spent your entire career perfecting are suddenly, becoming obsolete. It's that feeling of being totally overwhelmed by tech that seems to change faster than you can keep up. And that leads to frustration, burnout, and a real crisis of confidence. And finally, we have antipathy. This is that pure gut-level distrust. It's that little voice in your head that's worried about AI being used for, crazy levels of employee surveillance, or the feeling that it's just going to strip all the humanity out of the workplace. It's a fundamental, I just don't like what this thing represents kind of feeling. So, you've got fear, inefficacy, and antipathy all bubbling under the surface. What happens when an employee is basically forced to use AI anyway? Well, that resistance, it doesn't just vanish. Nope. It sparks this really powerful internal conflict. And that confrontation, it forces people to wrestle with some really big stuff. We're talking about a deep mistrust of the technology and what it's really for. It leads to these huge existential questions about their own value, their purpose at work, and it makes them think really hard about what AI's role in our society should even be. And this is just a brilliant way to see the two paths this internal conflict can take. On one hand, it can spiral down into anxiety, that awful feeling of being helpless, watching something negative happen that you can't stop. Or it can become a powerful moment for introspection. And that's a much more constructive path, where you start questioning your own beliefs and actually start making sense of the change. The story at BMW is a perfect example of this in action. Initially, the workers on the production line were, as you can imagine, super mistrustful of the new AI systems. But then something shifted as they started to reflect on how the tech was actually helping them, with those really complex, precise tasks. That anxiety started to melt away. It turned into introspection, and eventually it turned into acceptance. So here's the key takeaway, right? That moment of introspection, that internal struggle, that's the opening. That's the crack in the door. It's the organization's chance to step in and actually guide that process in a positive direction. So the big question is, how do they do it right? Well, the research lays out a really clear three-part game plan for turning that resistance into genuine collaboration. And it's all built on these three pillars: making AI accessible, focusing on how it helps people, And this is a big one, making the technology a legitimate part of the team. Okay, pillar number one, AI accessibility. Now, this is about way more than just running a few training sessions. This is about building real trust by making that AI black box totally transparent. When systems are explainable, when you can understand why they do what they do, and maybe even when they're designed with more human-like interactions, they stop being a threat and start feeling more like a partner. Second, and this is absolutely crucial, the focus has to be on augmentation, not replacement. A fantastic example is what Ford did with their cobots, which are basically collaborative robots. These things work right alongside the human employees. They're not taking anyone's job. They're doing the really tough stuff, the heavy lifting, reaching into awkward places, making the human's job safer, faster, and just plain better. And finally, leaders have to actively legitimize the technology. What does that mean? It means they have to be out there constantly communicating the why. Why are we using this? What is its real purpose? How is it going to help us all succeed? By showing its value over and over and setting clear rules for its use, AI stops feeling like some alien invader and starts feeling like an appropriate and even desirable tool for the job. So, what's the big picture here? What's the ultimate takeaway? Well, managing AI resistance isn't like flipping a switch. It's not about rolling out some program, checking a box, and saying, we're done. It's not a one-time fix at all. It's an ongoing, living process. Think of it like a continuous feedback loop, a conversation that never really ends. Individual fears and concerns have to be heard, and the company's strategies have to adapt in response. And as the technology itself keeps changing, so does the conversation we need to have about it. And that really brings us to this powerful quote from MIT's Eric Brynjolfsson. He puts it so perfectly. He reminds us that at the end of the day, the biggest hurdle in this massive technological shift, it isn't the tech itself. It's us. It's the messy, complicated, human side of change. Which leaves us with one final thought to chew on. What if we've been looking at this all wrong? What if AI resistance isn't some barrier we need to smash through, but is actually an open invitation? An opportunity to have the critical conversations we need to have to build a future where humans and AI can truly and successfully work together.